there are components to any speech, and I am sure we all Toastmasters, we're all accomplished Toastmaster, advanced, next step, and you know all of those. It's the preparation, the delivery, the attire, and so on. And one of them is know your audience, who you are giving this speech to. So I'm going to focus on that, on know your audience and how it is important to giving any speech. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to give you 2 stories for 2 speeches that I have given to an audience that the audience clearly were not receptive to those speeches. And I have learned a lot. Around, I think it was 2005, I used to be a member of, Tim was also a member of the South Loop Speak Free. They meet in this room, but they used to meet in another place in downtown. Around 1999, the United States gave back Panama to Panama, gave back the Panama Canal to the Panamanian because the lease expired. It was on the news all over. I was intrigued by it. I didn't know much about it. The ships lifting up and down. So I went and I gathered a lot of information. I spent a lot of time because at that time the internet was in the preliminary stages. It was very difficult to cut a map of Panama from the internet. That was 1990, 2003, 2004, around that time, maybe early 2000. So I went, I got a copy of some maps, I scanned the map, I prepared my PowerPoint presentation, and I spent a lot of time. I brought the equipment into the club, and I gave them Panama Canal presentation. I was very excited about the topic. I was a relatively new Toastmaster, and I had more energy than right now. I'm telling them how fantastic it is. The ship comes from the Atlantic and it goes up, it goes into the chamber, and there are the way it's raised up, because there are, and then I'm showing cross sections. There are openings in the bottom get filled with water, and it raises it up. There's a dam, and it goes up. Gatun Lake and Cauliflower Lake, and just so much detail that at the end the audience hated the speech. And how do I know they hated? Of course they were polite, they were Toastmasters. We didn't know each other that much like we know each other right now, so they were very polite. But how I knew that they hated that, was, yeah, maybe the clapping was just so subtle. But later on, when we became more friends with each other, they never stopped bringing the example of a speech that is not appropriate to the audience is the Panama Canal speech. So it awoke in me that you really need to know who you're giving the speech to. The topic to me was very interesting because it's from my profession. I have learned something new. I always like to learn things new. I have learned something, it's cross sections, and at that time I saw some animations, but not to the audience. So knowledge learned or lessons learned, I have to know what does the audience in this context like and give them this speech. So if you notice recently, I have learned from that to switch to the food topic because everybody wants to hear about food. But even switching the food topic, food, everybody wants to know what is the good food for me, what's the bad food, what's the GMO. I know Barbara likes to talk a lot about GMO. What is fattening, why soda is bad, why this red meat is bad, and so on. Even with that, you have to be extremely knowledgeable, extremely aware of what does the audience wants to hear. And here's another example that I have. I gave a speech about a month ago in this club about the poisonous
Tasty, poisonous.
Somebody joined after you gave the speech.
the poisonous aspect of hot dogs. I thought everybody eats hot dogs. I used to eat hot dogs. Actually, I think it's very tasty up to today, but I have a strong will, so I stay away from it. There were a riot in the club. People were not receptive. People. I remember Cynthia was sitting there, sitting, Solomon. Guess what I had for lunch today? And then another lady, I forget her name, she was just rejected for that, and she was saying, guess what I had yesterday for dinner and what I'm going to have tonight. And then I showed a picture. What I did in that speech, I found pictures of, I believe in, let me just retract this, I believe in mixing, and I always say that if you mix 1/4 in your dish or in your meal or in your daily intake, 1/4 is bad stuff, poisonous stuff that's clearly by science is not good for you, that's okay, as long as the 3/4 is okay, is good, is vegetables, fruit, and so on. So I thought, well, let me apply that concept into the hot dogs. So I found 3-4 pictures. One of them is the whole sandwich is a hot dog. Then even the hot dog's his ears is coming out of the bun that extended this and has no vegetables whatsoever. Then I found another one, medium solution, and then I found the last one, which is mostly, it looks like it's wheat bread. The hot dogs is small, tiny, and the rest is filled with vegetables. And I showed the picture. I thought that this is really represented. And I remember one person says, "I'm not going to eat that. What are you talking about?" So I think that the benefit is to know your audience. And while I was thinking about the topic, it crossed my mind a couple of years ago. I had a friend, his name is Oscar. We used to work together. He's Hispanic. Timothy Evans came to speak at the Hispanic community meeting, and I remember my friend Oscar was telling me, I am not voting for Timothy Evans. And probably you know who's Timothy. He's right now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Illinois. He was running for mayor at that time, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 years, more than that. And he said why he's not going to vote for him, because he said he was speaking to us about issues that we are not interested in. Doesn't even fit the Hispanic community. You come to a community, you have to address their needs. You don't go to whatever without giving examples. So that I remember. Now on the positive side, I have learned to really speak or prepare a topic that fits the context of the audience. And I'll give one example. I have a project that I have been working on for years, and that project has multiple disciplines. It has environmental disciplines, landscaping, structural disciplines, electrical, and so on. So once in a while I get invited to speak to, for example, to an environmental group. Those environmental groups, they don't want to hear anything about the word structural or the word lighting. Forget it. Give me what are you, water, landscaping, environment, saving gasoline, noise, air. So what I do in this case, I customize the PowerPoint. My PowerPoint had maybe 200 slides, just cut, paste, put it back and forth. So that's the positive thing that I have learned, that you have to really know your audience. So my time is up. Knowing your audience is very important. Even if you are coming to give them the most benefit that they want, you have to read. If they are not receptive to a hot dog that's full of green stuff, forget about that picture.
You had an example, which is good. You can do something a little bit better. I harp on it a lot. Someday it will happen. And it was very relevant. But there was something that was missing. Thoughts about improvement. One thing to be careful about is say you know. So when you say you know, and if your audience doesn't know, then they're stupid by definition. So you say you might know, you could know. If you don't know, if you haven't heard of it. So you might know X, Y, Z. If you haven't heard of it, these are the things they are. Just a thought. The thing that's better than an example is a story. You sort of gave us a story there, but then we felt kind of robbed. Because I almost had that thing with Cynthia. But I wanted your reaction, your internal reaction. I was thinking, I did it again. or something like that. Stories need to be seen, known, and heard. So I could sort of see Cynthia, but only because I knew already what she looked like. Describe her just a little bit. Known. What's the background? Well, we got a little bit of the background, but most importantly is heard. And throughout all these places we were narrating things, it'd be much nicer to have a little bit of dialogue going back and forth. Take us back that time. Put us in that moment. And then finally, there's no technique. Go out there and make things relevant to your audience. How? You're still trying to discover how. We're still trying to discover how. At the end, no clue how to make things relevant to my audience. But great idea. I encourage you to do the speech again, thinking about story. And if you do come up with a technique, giving us that technique.
Very relevant. And I really liked your first example, that personal story of the Panama Canal speech. And I could picture you as a young Toastmaster, all enthusiastic and just so excited about the Panama Canal. I mean, I loved that story. And what a disaster that speech was, because nobody else cared at all. And I liked your humor, your willingness to poke fun at yourself and teach us a lesson through that. That was really good. I thought the second example then of the hot dog speech, you had too many details. I almost felt as if I was hearing the hot dog speech again, without the cool pictures. And so that example went on a bit too long, and then I felt a positive example with how can we understand our audience, as Tim said, the technique to help us.
Well, Solomon, I really got caught into the stories. I really liked that. And I know about Panama. I would have really enjoyed hearing about it because how does that happen? There's a boat, you pass it along. I mean, it might be my engineering background coming through, but I can certainly relate. I've been thinking, how do I find out more about that? And certainly the story about the hot dogs and the food. And I know I've heard one of the stories. I can't remember if I heard the one that you were specifically talking about, so it seemed like it was an inside joke. For those that saw it, and I'm thinking, I better find that YouTube and watch that. Yeah, because it's a topic that's really relevant to me as well, too. So you had two very good topics that really connected with me, and I could step into it. The thing that I may also recommend to you is subheading. Know your audience is kind of okay, but how can you make it better? So a heading and subheading. Know your audience, or how to go from Panama to hot dogs. And I'm finding that the second one might be kind of funny, and then that way one of them's going to hit with me. Okay, I'll go with know your audience. That sounds pretty good. I don't know what this hot dog is, but I'm intrigued. Now I'm going to listen for this, and you also kind of give it away as a prelude to the stories. And the things that I noticed as you went through that, you stumbled upon the dates. The dates, everything has to be very accurate. And if you don't know, just say, it happened before 2003. It happened before 2010. Or something like that. It gives you a whole range of dates. So that it gives you a sense that, well, that's pretty accurate. Good enough is good enough. But if you say it's 2000, 2003, then I'm thinking, I'm losing it. I'm going to check on my internet and I'll shout it out. And then you get people yelling out. And I always look for the ending, the conclusion. What's my lesson and what I take away from this? And I got this, know your audience, and I followed through that. There was a process. I think it needed some more, maybe oomph, that I could stand up and march. Mr. Toastmaster.
I enjoyed your speech, and the two speeches you gave were great examples of know your audience. Now, some people in the audience might not have been interested, but if you had told them, I'm going to tell you about an unusual phenomenon, because I was right there in Panama, and I just got to looking at the pictures I took of that thing getting lined up. You know, I say I was there for hours trying to wait for everything to line up, you know. So it's really something interesting, and perhaps you could have told them that this is something you don't want to miss out on. Like some people don't believe the sun and the moon out at the same time, you know. Or one person didn't believe that it's clouds out at night. So tell them that this is a phenomenon you got to know about. And the same thing might be true of your speech on the vegetables, where we had one participant who decided that she didn't want any vegetables. And it could have been this is what's going to happen to you if you don't eat vegetables, you know. So these were great examples, and you wanted to learn from knowing your audience, and so I think these ways would help you to teach the audience. You've got to know this. And then when you gave your first example of the Panama, it could have been a more profound closing, so I can know you were through with that story, and now you're moving on to the hot dog story. So a nice closing would have been better.
Solomon, I enjoyed your speech, but I think that it was misdirected. I thought the speech was very funny, and I would have set it up as something like what to do when your audience hates you. Know your audience. Because I think that hot dog speech you seem to think was a failure, but everybody remembers the hot dog speech. Everybody got excited about the hot dog speech. There was a lot of laughing about the hot dog speech. I think I'm stunned about the Panama Canal speech. I've been a Toastmaster for these many decades, and I've probably heard hundreds, if not thousands, of speeches. And in that entire time, I've only been bored 2 or 3 times, because usually if somebody's excited enough to speak about a topic, it's exciting to listen to them. And you were so excited, I cannot imagine what was the matter with this audience, unless you didn't have that excitement then. So again, it would be helpful to know, what did you learn from this? You seem to think you need to know your audience in advance, but according to what you told us, you couldn't. You thought they'd love this speech, you gave the speech, they didn't love the speech. So obviously, can't talk about Panama with that group of people. That's not really useful to us. What would be useful is saying, what could I do to turn this around? Having thought about it, maybe this group would be more interested in me talking about the effect of maybe this was an environmental group, maybe I could talk about that. Or if you've had an experience when you could see that like the hot dog speech, you could see the audience is kind of not digging your message. How do you change it to pull them in? Although again, I think that hot dog speech was extremely successful. So think about what you can do in the middle of what seems to be like a dud of a speech. And at the very worst, obviously you can take your duds of a speech and put it into a pretty humorous, these are my dud speeches speech. So there's always something.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our speaker, Solomon. This is the most animated ever I've seen you on stage. I love the speech. Your facial expressions, you should watch the video afterwards. Was outstanding. I've never seen you this animated and this passionate about the speeches you thought didn't work out. It was very interesting. Yeah, and I like how you show the high energy instead of just tell us the high energy. You show that you are passionate. Sincerely can see your passion on that Panama speech, Canal speech. I said, yeah, so what's wrong with the whole time? What's in my head was, well, I don't think there will be anything wrong that's not possible with that speech. So why the audience didn't like it? That was a big question I had throughout the whole time you're speaking. If you really want to make a point how much they hated it, maybe you can take it, like stretch it a bit further. You know, maybe use, I don't know, maybe the speech was a little bit too much of technical words or things. Viscosity, structural, or the tensile strength, or something. Just get a stronger functional equations, the boundary conditions, or something. Is yeah, why the audience do not like those things? And stretch it further, so we will say, ah, okay, then we got it. Why they didn't like it? And I like how you relate the point you're trying to make to the food speech you did. Like most of the audience were there, and you can relate to that. But to be honest, I love you. I love your food speech. I love it very much because I like it. It has its edge because you have a very strong and clear point of view. You have your edge, and we can hear your passion. So But I really like that speech, and I would invite, if you haven't seen it, go on go to the Next Step website and see the video. As the third point, I was thinking of what this speech is about. Jenna mentioned is what do you do with your audience speech? I love that. And also something to think about is maybe it is about just to test out your speech material, because sometimes we never know until we test it out. And I think that's one of the reasons we're giving our speeches and practice at Toastmasters, because then we get a chance to test it out and see what's the reaction and fine-tuning the speeches. Yeah, but overall, thank you so much for this such an animated and humorous speech.